And now that we have U.S. representatives threatening acts of violence in relation to this specific case, it's mind-boggling to me, Judge.
Well, I'll give you that Congresswoman Waters may have given you something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function.
Derek Chauvin trial judge Peter Cahill acknowledging Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters' recent comments could open the door for the defense to appeal the jury's verdict if Chauvin is convicted on any of the 3 counts he is facing tonight. Let's unpack that with former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and Talking Feds podcast host Harry Lippman, Washington State GOP U.S. Senate candidate Tiffany Smiley, and criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Welcome, all of you. Time for a discussion. Let's start here. Professor Jonathan Turley said this today. He said, the record now contains a statement from the court that Waters may have undermined the case and that this is a valid basis for appeal. He also noted that Waters was not just risking the integrity of the case, but showing open contempt for the judicial branch. Brian, judges do not like it when they think there's anything that could interfere potentially with the integrity of their jury and of their trial.
Yeah, not only that, Shannon, but you also have other Sixth Amendment issues here. I mean, this trial is taking place in a courtroom that has fencing around it, has military personnel throughout the courtroom. You've got people in the streets that are demonstrating. You've got the shooting death of Daunte Wright recently. And now on top of all of that, you now have Maxine Waters saying that people need to be, quote, confrontational if there are not guilty verdicts on all 3 charges. And that really does challenge the integrity of the judicial system. I mean, it forces jurors to potentially be influenced or coerced into leaning in favor of a guilty verdict. And it's just not the right place or time.
Megyn Kelly tweeting this out. Ignore the disgraceful Maxine Waters rhetoric. Pray for this jury to come to a verdict based on the evidence and their common sense. When the verdict comes down, respect those 12 citizens who, unlike the press, took an oath to render judgment fairly. I mean, Harry, there is so much emotion. There is so much news. There's so much tension that has surrounded this entire trial and the death of George Floyd. But when it comes down to it, there are very specific rules of evidence and, other things that the jury has to follow. And the judge is going to tell them, take your emotions out of it, apply the facts to the law and make a decision. It now sits with the jury. What does the weight say to you?
I'm sorry, Shannon. So totally stupid, inane comment from Maxine Waters. But as Brian says, as you've just said, this jury already knew it was in a cauldron. Everyone's looking at it. They know there are possible consequences. They swore up front to ignore them as they have to do. I don't see any basis for any kind of reversal here unless there's some specific evidence where a juror comes forward and says, we were influenced. It's more, they already know what a pressure cooker this is, and there's no reason to think that this will sway them any more than anything else has.
There is the political side of this now as well, because Congresswoman Waters is taking plenty of heat from the GOP. There's now pressure on Democrats to disavow what she said in the way that she got involved with this particular issue. There's also, the president's going to have to think about this as well. It's something that he's going to have to potentially discuss. The AP says this: the verdict in the aftermath will be a test for Biden, who has pledged to help combat racism and policing. But he also has long projected himself as an ally of police who are struggling with criticism about long-used tactics and training methods and difficulties in recruitment. Tiffany, what do you make of the possibility that this completely turns into a political situation? Both sides have been talking about it and trying to leverage it as we now wait on the jury.
First and foremost, I'm heartbroken for George Floyd and his family. I also think of my African-American friend who most recently had to have a conversation with her teenage son before he went to the basketball courts. And, let him know that what he should say if someone approaches him or how he should act. And as a mom of 3 boys, that breaks my heart because I can't imagine having to have that conversation just because of the color of their skin. I also think of my friend Elena, who will be sending her husband out on the SWAT team in the weeks to come every night, wondering if he will come home to her and their new baby. Look, if we want unity in this country, we need to have the tough conversations. We need to be able to have them, and we cannot fight violence with violence. You look at what happened last summer in Seattle in the autonomous zone. And what we're seeing unfold in most recently this week, this is unacceptable. What Maxine Waters did was interfere with our judicial system, our legal system, and she has put herself now in a place of jeopardizing a case. She's also inciting violence in cities all across our country, like in Seattle. And look, I'm not a lawyer like my fellow panelists, but I do respect our legal system. And this is why I am running for the United States Senate, because career politicians like Maxine Waters and Patty Murray in Washington State have lost the respect for our judicial system. They've lost the respect for the system of government that they swore to uphold. Look, our country needs truth, hope, and life in every country, every city, every community. And that is what I will fight for every single day for Washington State.
And for now, we have to wait and see what the aftermath of this particular trial will be. Brian, there's a lot of discussion about due process, about the emotions running high. Here are some people that say, hey, we've seen everything we need to see on tape. This guy is guilty. I mean, how important is it for us to allow these jury members and our judicial system to weed through this very difficult, very heated case?
Yeah, great point, Shan. This is not a slam dunk. You can't just look at the videotape. I know it's horrible, and I know it looks really horrific for George Floyd's family, but look, there is a really credible medical causation issue that this jury is going to have to take a really close look at. I mean, Dr. Baker was the county medical examiner, Shannon. He was the best witness for the defense case. He came in here and said that an enlarged heart, a 90% occluded artery, fentanyl, methamphetamine, that contributed to George Floyd's death. And then he went on to say that he didn't see any bruising on the back of the neck of George Floyd. He went on to say that placing somebody in a prone position doesn't usually result in asphyxiation. So in my opinion, this deliberation is going to take several days, like you said. And like Megyn Kelly said, let this jury filter through some very complex medical evidence and make a determination on whether the actions of Chauvin really was the legal medical cause of George Floyd's death. That's going to be at the heart of whether there's a hung jury or not.
Yeah, there are 3 different charges he is currently facing. The maximum is 40 years in prison if convicted on second-degree murder. We now wait for the jury to figure that out and whether they can come to a unanimous decision on any or all of these counts. Panel, thank you for being with us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Shannon.